Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel Bandy's Books, and today I'm here with a special video. So I'm super excited. In April, I am going to be participating in my first readathon ever as a host. The readathon that I'm going to be participating in is called Nevermore-athon, and it is inspired by the show Wednesday on Netflix. If you're unfamiliar with the show, this is a remake of The Addams Family, but told through the perspective of the daughter Wednesday. Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday, and it's a really cool show, really well done. And I definitely binge watched the whole first season, and I am very much looking forward to season 2. I don't watch a lot of television, but this was like one of my guilty pleasure series throughout the year. So I'm thrilled to get to participate in this readathon with this theme. If you're looking for a post with the rules and guidelines for the readathon, check out Adventures in the Enchanted Forest. She is the primary host of this readathon, the person that set this whole thing up, came up with the ideas and everything, and you'll find lots of helpful information on her account. There is the announcement post, and then there are several recommendation videos. So there are 7 teams in total, and I think there's 6 different hosts in total. So each person is responsible for a different team. So I'm hosting Team Stoners. So today with my recommendations, I'm going to be talking about the Stoners bingo board and a couple books for each of the categories of recommendations. My co-hosts are Bookworm.Wander, The Book Dreamer's Alley, Bookish Buddies, and Book Kara. So definitely check out each of their videos as well, recommending the books for their individual teams. And if you're interested in participating, feel free to pick any team that sounds good to you, look at the prompts, see what sounds like the most fun, and join in where you're interested. So from there, we're gonna jump straight into the recommendations. You will see a bingo card popping up somewhere here on the screen. So we'll go through the prompts from the top right all the way across, and then, the same. So our first prompt is going to be books with gray covers. So I've picked out 2 books that I really enjoy. The first one is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor, Towles. Everything by Amor Towles is excellent, and he actually has other books with gray book covers, but this is probably my favorite of his books that I've read so far. And as you can see, it has a very gray color. This is about a man who is sort of a political prisoner within Russia as like the old oligarchy falls and new communist party takes over. But he's like a really liked, well-connected sort of a guy. So instead of being thrown into a gulag or like exterminated, he is told that he can live inside of this luxury hotel, but he's never allowed to leave the hotel. So it's about his life inside the hotel and kind of him making the best of it. It's a really good book, and there's amazing food description. I actually have a video where I cook a recipe based on this book. So if you're interested in that, you can take a look up there, and that'll give you a little more detail about the book too. And my second book with a great cover is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This is a shorter book, as you can see, and this is about Ocean's own life. It's written in letter format to his own mother, and it covers issues like fitting in with society, being immigrants in a new country, sexuality, identity, bullying. It's a beautifully written book. Ocean is actually originally a poet, and so this is his first non-poetry book, and you can definitely tell that his skills lie in poetic description. The prose in this is stunning, and this is just a really beautiful book, so highly recommend this. Our next category is Greek mythology, and I just finished Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. This is a book about Medusa. It's told from multiple perspectives. We hear some of the story from Medusa herself, but we also hear from her sisters, we hear from Athene, and we hear from Perseus. And all of these different POVs come together to create the ultimate story of Medusa. It's a pretty cool book, a little different than I was expecting initially, but an enjoyable enough a read. And I do have a full review of it if you're interested up here. My next recommendation is Elektra by Jennifer Saint. This is a book that I actually just finished about a week ago, and this follows Clytemnestra and then several other women within like Greek mythology, kind of revolving around the Trojan War. Focuses mostly in on Clytemnestra, Elektra, and Cassandra, who has like the gift of sight, but nobody really believes her. And we see each of their POVs as the Trojan War happens, as Agamemnon returns from the war, and kind of the curse on Agamemnon's family and how it affects the women around him. Pretty interesting book. I enjoyed it very much. The next category we have is books set in a shop. So the first recommendation I have is The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This is set in Iran in like the 1950s. There's some political upheaval, and this follows 2 teenagers as they kind of fall for each other. They slip each other notes via books in the stationery shop. And it's about their enduring love throughout the political chaos and then separation over the years. This is a really beautiful book. If you want like a really sweet love story and a little bit of history of Iran, this is a beautiful book to read. My second recommendation in this category is a very strange recommendation for me because I do not read a whole lot of romance, but it's Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I feel like Emily Henry is one of the few romance readers that I can actually read and occasionally enjoy. Book Lovers is one of her more recent books, and while it's not completely set in a shop, there is a lot that happens within a bookstore, so I thought that that was a nice little fitting book. So the next category is going to be books with a protector, and I picked up the Scholomance series by Naomi Novik. This is a kind of a dark fantasy sort of series. It's about children in a school, and at this school they have to fight like malicious creatures and survive. And basically only the strongest kids survive and go out into the world and continue to exist. And even when they get out in the world, then they're going to be hunted by these malicious evil creatures as well. So we have a main character who has a specific type of power, and she's not the most popular kid at school due to her type of power. She's kind of viewed as being borderline a dark creature herself. But there's another kid in the school who's really popular named Orion, and Orion has just this extraordinary power to defeat all of these evil creatures, and he latches onto her and decides he's going to protect her. And it's kind of a begrudging situation at first, but eventually they become fast friends, and that continues throughout the story. So I think that fits the protector role. This is an excellent series, and the third book just released a little while ago, so it is now, I believe, a complete series if you're interested in reading it. And we have an epic fantasy, The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. We have several main characters in this book, but one of our main characters is named Ede. She comes from the Priory, and she is there to protect Queen Sabran. Queen Sabran does not know this. Ede is basically disguised as one of her ladies in waiting, but Ede is actually a badass assassin, and she's secretly killing off the people that are attempting to assassinate Queen Sabran in the evenings. Definitely a protector role. So this one for sure fits. So the next category of books is going to be set in stone or already planned books. So I can't exactly give you a recommendation for this because that would require me to know what you've already planned for the month. So this is going to be a book that you've been putting, on your TBR for a while, something that you have definite plans to read in the month of April, and that'll count for this particular spot on our bingo board. Next up, we have a multiple POV type story. So I have two books. My first is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I actually just finished this like a day or two ago, and it's so stuck in my head, so I figured I'd have to recommend it. It's a super short read, and it tells the story of a woman who is living in South Korea and decides to go vegetarian. The story is told from the perspective of her husband, her brother-in-law, and her sister, and it's kind of a story of feminism and like social disruption. And it's kind of a confusing, like uncomfortable, interesting story, but I feel like I've been thinking about it nonstop since I read it. So if you like literary fiction, things that make you really question society, question the world that you live in, something that's a little bit feminist, this is a really good book. The next recommendation I have for this category is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This series is so much fun. If you like fantasy with like a sprinkle of sci-fi elements, you like a really tough main character, and you like a really unique concept that you've probably never seen anywhere else, this is your story. It is about a group of people named Origines, and Origines have power to basically like shift rock. They can shift tectonic plates, create earthquakes, things like that. And it's kind of about Mother Earth and like Mother Earth rebelling against humans for everything they've done. Such a cool story, so unique. I read literally all three books within 1 week. I could not put it down. And it's definitely got that multi-perspective type of situation going on. So if you're a fantasy reader, highly recommend. Our next category is going to be reserved characters. This one made me think a little bit, and then I remembered a couple old favorites. So the first one that I'm going to recommend is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. We have a couple characters in here that are kind of a little bit more reserved. We have especially our main character, Tova, who is an elderly woman. She's working in the aquarium. Her husband's passed away, her son's passed away, and really while she is liked by everybody that's around her, she doesn't really have any super deep friendships. She's not like a super social outgoing person, and she really bonds actually with a octopus in this story. Marcellus, a giant Pacific octopus, and her become friends. And it's just beautiful reading about their relationship, reading about Tova and like her finding her place in the world at this new age that she's at. A really, really great book. It's got some tough topics, but overall it left me feeling kind of warm and fuzzy. And my second recommendation for this category is A Man Called Uva by Frederick Bachman. This is a classic. So Uva is an older, curmudgeonly sort of man. He lives on his own, his wife has died, and he kind of just seems to hate the world. He wants to cloister inside his home and not have to deal with anybody. He's kind of that like typical old guy that's like yelling at the kids out front to get off his lawn. But then he meets his new next door neighbors, and no matter how hard he fights it, they start to try to worm their way in. And it's just a really sweet book. It's very heartwarming, and Uva is that classic introvert that's being forced to be a little bit social by some extroverts. I think this one's a great one for this category. After that, we have the category of small books. So I took this to mean both physically small and like small in terms of page count. So my first recommendation for this category is going to be The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. This is actually my French copy. My mom got me a copy in French for my bookshelf, but it's originally written in English, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. It's very short, but it's so beautiful. The prose in this is stunning. It's about a man who's on death row, and he's at his final hour, and he's kind of somebody that never really talks but just sits and watches the world and all the enchanted things around him. So I don't think I've ever read a book about such a gruesome setting, but with such beautiful prose. It's just like a very, very magical book to me. So highly recommend that. This is only like 230 pages, so not a big read at all. And my next recommendation for this category is Noor by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a North African science fiction / Afrofuturism type of a novel. It features a character named Ao. Ao had a tragic accident, and it required a bunch of artificial intelligence pieces to put her back together, basically. So she's got a whole lot of robotic equipment. She has like robotic internal organs and different limbs that are robotic. And she does her best to hide this because the society that she's living in is really prejudiced against artificial intelligence. At some point, she is attacked by a mob and she flees, and she ends up caught up with a Fulani herdsman named DNA, and the two of them are both being pursued, and they flee out into the desert, into this community in the desert, looking for, you know, some sort of sanctuary. It's a really interesting book and a unique concept. As you can see, this is a short read, only about 211 pages, and I pretty much did this whole thing in one sitting. Really a fun book. Our next category is, I guess, the category of books that I really love, because I had such a hard time creating a concise list of recommendations. There are a ton of books. I limited it to, I think, like 6, but I could have easily gone up to like 20 just in this one category. Category is one-word titles, so let's get right into it. My first book for this category is Mame by Jessica George. This is about a young woman named Maddie who is dealing with all the responsibilities and burden from her family. Her father is suffering from Parkinson's syndrome, her mom is off in Ghana running the family business, and her brother is out and about traveling and living his life. Maddie is the only one that's basically buckled down and dealing with everything. She's at home caring for the father, she's stuck in a job that she doesn't love, she has no romantic pursuits or like anything on her romantic horizon. She doesn't really have any social life of any sort. And so Maddie decides that she's going to make a change, and this book follows her as she tries to make those changes. This is really honestly quite excellent, and I did a full-scale review up here if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about this. My second recommendation in this category is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is a book that I can't really talk a whole lot about without spoiling it, but essentially it's about a man living inside of a house, and this house has some magical elements, and we're basically just trying to figure out what's going on within this house, the same as the man that's living within the house. It's like a mystery that we're solving together. I love this book. I have a 24-hour reading blog of this book up here if you're interested in it, but this was my favorite book of the year last year. Highly recommend it. The next recommendation I have for this category is Matrix by Lauren Groff. This is about a woman who is the bastard child of a royal, and she's excommunicated from the family and sent to live in a nunnery. And at this nunnery, she basically takes over. She becomes new prioress, and she has an extreme knack for business. And she takes this from a failing nunnery to an extremely successful nunnery with all sorts of unique practices and business ideas. I found Matrix to be so clever and funny. I really, really enjoyed it. After that, we have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is another book that I really enjoyed, and I didn't necessarily expect to enjoy this going into it. It's about William Shakespeare and his inspiration for Hamlet, but it's all told through the perspective of his wife. which I actually really enjoyed because obviously we kind of know Shakespeare and his story and all that. So this gives it like a unique perspective. We're seeing it from the perspective of somebody that's left behind at home, and it's brilliant work. I really, really recommend this book. My next recommendation is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This is a book that follows a Korean family from the 1900s through several generations. It is such an interesting book. It's sweeping, and like I said, it covers so much territory. I really, really recommend this book. Great book for a one-word title. And my last book with a one-word title is going to be Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is for my dark academia lovers. This is set in the late 1820s at Oxford, and it follows a young character named Robin as he learns about his ability with linguistics. I love the concept of this book. I love that it's dark academia. I love that it has diverse representation. I love R.F. Kuang's writing. I think that this is a phenomenal piece. So definitely if you're looking for something kind of nice and chunky, dark academia vibes, and something that'll also fit that one-word title, Babel is your read. Our next category is books with rumors. The two that I have are both like heart-pounding, rumor-oriented books. And the first one is Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Yamide. This follows Devin and Chiamaka. They go to a private school. They're the only two Black students in an all-white academy, and things are normal. And then all of a sudden, somebody starts sending vicious rumors via text messages to the entire school about the two of them. They're outing them for secrets, making things sound worse than they are, just, generally like rumor mongering. And it leads to a very, very suspenseful tale. If you like thrillers, especially psychological ones, this is your book. After that, I have Wahala by Nikki May. This is also a psychological thriller. It's about three best friends living in London. Their families are all connected via Nigeria. Some of them are somewhat related. Some of them went to school together. And then a fourth friend joins the group, and she also has like connections via Nigeria. Once she joins the group, things start to go weird. All of a sudden there's like rumors between each other about like certain friends. There's stuff going on, they're misunderstanding each other, and it's just like generally about bad vibes and bad luck. That's literally what Wahala means, is bad luck. This is a really interesting book. If you like a thriller that's centered around a friend group, I think that this would be a fun book to read. Next up is favorite genre. So I read across like pretty much every genre, and I love a lot of different genres. But I think my old favorite classic genre that I go to when I'm feeling stressed out, when I need something enjoyable to read, is fantasy. So we're gonna talk about two fantasy recommendations that I think you're gonna love. The first is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This is an epic tale of a middle-aged pirate. She's been retired. She gets called back from retirement to go find the daughter of an old acquaintance. And it's just so much fun. It's, swashbuckling on the seas, adventure, a really evil bad guy, just so much fun. The characterization's phenomenal. There's a lot to love about this book. I did a full-scale review of it up here. This just dropped recently, so it's probably the newest book on this list, but definitely worth checking out if you like fantasy too. And then I wanted to recommend the Poppy War trilogy, also by R.F. Kuang. This is a 3-book series that is about the Second Sino-Japanese War, and there's a bunch of fantasy elements incorporated into it. It is a really unique concept. I love this book. Same thing. I got the first book, read it, and then was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. I have to read all 3 in like one go. And I binge read them in a very short period of time. I definitely recommend this if you like a lot of action, you like fantasy, but you like things that are constantly happening, you like big scale wars, strategy, all that kind of stuff. This is a good book series for you. Next category is coming of age. So I have The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. This is honestly like a classic. I feel like it's definitely a modern classic at least. This is about a young boy in Afghanistan and some of the choices that he makes as a child, and it's him as an older man reflecting on that childhood and those childhood decisions. It's a very emotional and moving book. I definitely recommend it if you haven't read it. My second coming of age selection is The Circus Train by Amita Parika. I just finished this one like in the last 2 weeks, and I loved it so much. It's set in about 1938, and we have a main character named Lena. Lena is suffering from the after effects of polio, so she's using a wheelchair for mobility. At the time that this book is set, that's a kind of an uncommon thing, and she's sort of ostracized from the rest of society. Her father, Theo, is a master magician or a master illusionist of the circus that they live in, and because of Lena's mobility issues, she doesn't really get to participate in the circus. So she mostly spends her time with her doctor and her teacher, and she's like a great scholar. She studies, she's really, really bright, and everybody encourages her in her schooling and like with how bright she is. And then one day they come across this young orphan boy named Alexandra, and he is fleeing the Nazis. They hide him within the circus, and he and Lena become close friends. This is about the two of them growing up, and World War II is occurring while the story is occurring, so we have some of that going on, and it's really mostly just about the friendship and how this friendship survives over the years. Beautiful book. I really loved it. I think you will too. So our next category is second chance authors, and obviously I can't recommend to you who your second chance authors are because I don't know which authors you didn't vibe with the first time you read them. But for me personally, I'm going to be giving Gabrielle Zevin a second chance. I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I know everybody's raving about it, but something about it didn't vibe for me. I'm not really into video games. I just think a lot of it just kind of went over my head. I don't think that the writing was necessarily bad. I think it was just a kind of a me thing. So I want to give her a second chance. I have heard really good things about the storied life of A.J. Fikry, I think it is. And so I've been wanting to try that book. So that's going to be my second chance author. The category after that is friend pick. So for my recommendation for that, any of the books that I've recommended in this video definitely count because I'm your friend and I'm recommending them to you. You could also pick any booktube friend and have them recommend a book to you, or have a friend in real life recommend a book to you. It doesn't matter how you fulfill this prompt, but definitely feel free to count any of the books in this video as your friend recommendation. And our final category is character out of this world. I'm so excited because I have so many recommendations for this. I narrowed it down to 2, but honestly, I could have talked about this one single category for ages. So the first one that I picked was Iron Widow by J. Zhao. This is a book that's set in a fictional country called Waxia. Wu Zetian is our main character. Wu Zetian is actually based on the first empress of China, and she is basically a conduit for power. So we have these massive chrysalises that are being used to fight off an alien race, and you have both a male and a female pilot in the chrysalises. The female pilots are used as conduits of power, and the male pilots basically channel their power through the female pilots. And this causes the female pilots to have an extraordinarily high death rate until Wu Zetian comes along. And she has just an extraordinary amount of power. In fact, she's so powerful that they can't find male pilots to match her. They're struggling. And she realizes that really the women have the power, that they're like suppressing the female power in the story. This is such a good book. Wu Zetian is such a badass character. I loved it. It has science fiction elements, fantasy elements, feminist elements. I love that there's like a love triangle, but it's like more of a modern situation. It's not the, oh, I have to pick one or the other kind of a situation. Definitely recommend this book if you haven't read it. And my second recommendation for Out of This World is the Black Sun series. This is one of my all-time favorite fantasy series. It's by Rebecca Roanhorse, and it is set in a fictional world. It kind of is based on indigenous cultures, like a whole multitude of indigenous cultures, not one specifically. But we have multiple POVs, so it also fits your multiple perspective prompt. And it's kind of based around like religions. There's several competing religions trying to take power. And there's different things that are going on, different spiritual events. It's kind of centered around a winter solstice, and then a eclipse occurs, and that eclipse is the start of this kind of, I don't want to say battle exactly, but this fight for power between a couple of the dominant religions. Full of interesting characters, full of interesting concepts. If you love a good fantasy read, this is what's up. I definitely recommend this book. So those are all my recommendations for this bingo board. If you're interested in joining the Stoners, I would be so thrilled to have you. I'm going to be hosting sprints throughout the month to make sure we're getting our reading in. Whether you're part of my team or someone else's team, please feel free to join. And I hope that maybe you found 1 or 2 books that seem interesting to you with these recommendations. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and let me know down in the comments what team you'll be reading for, what you're reading this month, anything you're excited about. Talk to me about it. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell. That way you never miss a video and we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.